Good morning, everyone. I am Sarah Phillips, the Executive Director of the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce and Manager of Comfish Alaska 2021. Thank you so much for joining us today in this unconventional format. We're confident that you'll find the Comfish Alaska experience informative, social, and hopefully even a little bit fun. And so our forum presentations will begin at 10 a.m. this morning. As you know, we're running a little bit late. But before we welcome our presenters, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Without them, we would not have been able to gather on this inventive new platform. So please help support us by supporting them. Our top level sponsors include Alaska Airlines, Madsen, KVOK and Hot 101.1, the Best Western Kodiak Inn, and Alaska Aerospace, with supporting sponsors Silver Bay Seafood, the City and Borough of Kodiak, the Kodiak Daily Mirror, Linden Transport, Koniag, and Worldwide Movers. That may seem like a lot of sponsors, but it took financial support from each of them to come together with us today. We, of course, also want to take time to say thank you to the Comfish Committee, which is really the powerhouse group behind this event. Please take time to say a quick thank you to Julie Bonney, Jeff Stephen, Linda Kozak, Julie Matwayu, Teresa Peterson, Phil Lamprin, and Kevin Baumgardner. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce staff, Jenna Lowmaster, Emily Sullivan, and Jennifer Colton. They've poured hours into making this event as seamless as possible. So before we get started, I'd also like to let all the attendees know that if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, you're not getting the complete Comfish Alaska 2021 experience. Please visit comfishak.com to register and attend this fully interactive event. Those joining us today on the Hopin platform, thank you. You'll notice that you can submit questions during the forums in the forum stage chat under Q&A, and the moderator will relay those questions to the presenters. After the forums, be sure to visit the expo, where you can interact with live representatives from exhibitor booths. Also, make liberal use of that People tab, where you can connect via chat or live video with any Comfish attendee. I'd now like to introduce our first session of Comfish Alaska 2021. We're kicking the event off with the federal update from Alaska's Congressional Delegation. Joining us live today is Senator Lisa Murkowski and hopefully Senator Dan Sullivan. I know he's having some trouble joining us from his other responsibilities, just some tech issues today. But also joining us via pre-recorded video is Congressman Don Young. And so let me first say Congressman Don Young was reelected in 2020 to his 25th term in the House of Representatives. He was first sworn in to the 93rd Congress after winning a special election on March 6, 1973. He is the longest serving Republican in the history of the Congress. Congressman Young has served as the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee and chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committees. In the 117th Congress, Congressman Young serves as the most senior Republican on both the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and Natural Resources Committee. After serving in the Army, Congressman Young relocated to Fort Yukon, Alaska, a remote village of approximately 700 people. There, he met his late wife, Lou, and raised two daughters, Joni and Dawn. He entered public service in 1964 when he was elected mayor of Fort Yukon. He later served in the Alaska State House and State Senate before being elected to the U.S. House in 2021. Congressman Young is as active as ever and continues to champion legislation benefiting Alaska and the nation. So Congressman Young did share a video with us that he wanted to go ahead and let all of you know. So one moment and we'll get that all queued up.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure what time of day it is there in Kodiak, but I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting on Comfish again. And I'm sorry I can't be with you personally. I don't think anybody's worked harder on the fishing industry than I have over the years. The Magnuson Act with Gary Studs and myself came in the House. It ended up being the Magnuson-Stevens Act. But it's been a great success. And that's probably one of my top priorities now, because we're trying to, I call, fine tune it, as I did last year. The chairman now, Mr. Huffman, and I have talked together, and we hope we can work out something that's mutually acceptable. I will not weaken the councils. I believe in a council instead of the secretary. That's when he thinks the secretary should run it. Then it becomes at the mercy of the sitting presidents. So we're going to work very hard to make sure that the bill comes out that understands the original intent, that's sustainable yield and the proper distribution of the fish to the fishermen. We'll work on that very hard and maybe give the council a little more flexibility to make it work. This whole pandemic thing has hurt us badly. As you know, and a lot of you are directly affected with the processing plants, and the cost of fish or price of fish went down. We're working to try to replace that, and hopefully some of the CARES money got through to you in time. I hope it'll solve the problem. We also have the other problem of the Chinese tariff. We're working very hard now to work with the Chinese to make sure that our fish are not taxed, either coming and going, so we have a better opportunity to keep the prices high. You know, the fishing industry is one of the most important factors of the Alaska economy, always has been, always will be, if we take care of the fish. So I am here to hear what you have to say in time. As I've always said and told people that meet with me and talk with me, knowledge is power. So if you see a problem, as we renew the Magnuson Act, come to me and call my staff, whatever happens, and let me know what the problem is. It's not going to be easy. We have a different administration, as I told you. It'll be a little bit more difficult. I am hoping that we'll get it done this year. If we don't, we'll be able to survive without it, but I'd like to upgrade it. The Magnuson-Stevens Act so it can do the job that we originally intended it to do. And that actually was my second large piece of legislation over 40 years ago. The Magnuson-Stevens Act, like I told you, Gary Studs and I passed it out. It's been a great success. We can make it better. We have another problem. We still have some people, and one of the biggest challenges we have in Congress, that are elected from cities that have little knowledge of fisheries and effect upon fisheries upon individuals, the economy of the areas in which they catch the fish. So we have to, keep our eyes open and work together. And ComFish is a good way to do this. It's a beginning. It's a start. It's an idea. As we go forth through the upcoming legislative years, I'm hoping that we'll come to a final conclusion of a benefit to the Alaskan fishermen. I've introduced and passed the young fishing law. I think is a good law signed by the president. That makes me quite excited. There'll be other pieces of legislation we'll be working on this next coming 2 years. One thing too is we try to solve problems legislatively. Just keep in mind that this is a long-term program. You don't get it done this year, we get it done next year, et cetera, et cetera. Perseverance overcomes intelligence any day of the year. And I'm a classic example of that, but I do believe in the constant pressure to get things done for my constituents for the benefit of the fishing industry in the state of Alaska. Anyway, I want you to have a good ComFish and good meeting and friendship and maybe a little of this, a little of that. I do miss you. I'd like to be there. I can't be. And again, God bless you all, and God bless Alaska and the United States of America.
Thank you to Congressman Don Young for offering a video just to share with us. Next up is going to be Senator Lisa Murkowski. She is the state's first Alaskan-born U.S. Senator and has served in the United States Senate since 2002. She is a member of both the State Energy and Natural Resources Committee and Senate Appropriations Committee. Senator Murkowski has been a champion for Alaska's fisheries and coastal communities through legislation and her position on the Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee, where she has a key role in shaping NOAA's annual funding. Alaskan priorities she has fought for include funding for fisheries surveys in the Bering Sea and Gulf of Alaska, fishery disaster funds, clear labeling of genetically engineered salmon, USDA purchases of Alaska seafood, COVID assistance for fishermen and processors, and funding for efforts in Alaska to address marine debris, harmful algal blooms, and ocean acidification. Lisa is married to Vern Martell, and they have 2 grown sons. She loves spending time in the Alaska outdoors and is an avid skier, has hiked on glaciers, enjoys fall duck hunts, and has a pretty impressive king salmon mounted on her office wall. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah. It's good to be with you on this virtual site. A little bit different. We all recognize that, but we take it as it comes. I want to thank the Chamber once again for continuing a pretty extraordinary tradition and gathering with ComFish. It seems to me that the last time we talked with the virtual ComFish was September. And folks were wrapping up a pretty challenging summer fishing season. It was affected by the COVID protocols, but we saw really low salmon runs, the pandemic-related drops in the price of fish. So we know it has been tough. It's just been a tough season. So I want to first acknowledge and really give a shout out to all of Alaska's fishermen for your dedication, your resilience. You've worked it through. You're not only providing for your families, you're providing for your coastal communities, but you're also providing great protein and resource for people around the country and truly around the world. So keep it up. We've got reason to be optimistic. We're seeing greater vaccination rates. Alaska is #1. It's always good to be recognized as number one. And we're seeing these shots get into arms quickly and in a way that I think is going to make a difference for how we're operating going forward. It was kind of neat last week to see on Instagram pictures of some of those that are part of the crabbing fleet. They were delivering product in Unalaska, and literally the nurses or the PAs coming down from the clinic to put shots in arms right there on the docks. So it's starting to make a difference, and I think we're going to see that play out. So the Congressman mentioned in his comments some of the fisheries assistance that has come about to help our fisheries, whether through the CARES Act or through the subsequent pieces of legislation. Remember, we had five bills that addressed COVID impact in the year 2020, moved out about $4 trillion in the past year, and then just about a month ago now, yet another increment of COVID relief. This one went far beyond COVID relief. It was a much more aggressive package, but the support for our fisheries we've been fighting to make sure is in there. Last year was about $300 million for fisheries assistance in the CARES Act. Alaska got $50 million of that. We also created a new authority for the Secretary of Commerce to provide direct assistance to fishermen for COVID-related losses. And I know we hear all over the state the frustration from folks about why is this funding taking so long to get out there? We agree it has taken way too long. I do appreciate Fish and Game's work to get a spend plan with stakeholder input. We continue to try to address this, and this relates to fisheries disasters more broadly. I've been working with Senator Wicker, who was the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee. Now he's the ranking member. We've been working to make the fishery disaster process move more quickly. I've also encouraged NOAA to more quickly allocate the COVID-related funds and to approve these spend plans that are provided by the states. So we're working to allocate the additional $300 million in fisheries assistance that I helped get into the year-end omnibus. $30 million of this funding will be set aside for tribal and subsistence fisheries. The remainder allocated to commercial and charter fishermen across the nation. So more resources there. Of course, Fishermen need to have the ability to be able to deliver your fish, and so making sure that our processors are addressed in the midst of all of this has been important as well. They have invested heavily in protective measures at their facilities. We saw this winter what happens when a processing plant has to shut down because of a COVID outbreak. Everyone feels the negative impacts. So processors have invested a lot. We want to make sure that there is relief for them as well, contained within the American Rescue Plan, which again I mentioned passed Congress a few weeks ago. The USDA is directed to provide grants and loan support to seafood processing facilities and processing vessels. Initially, the language was just going to provide for food processors and not seafood. It took a little bit of effort to make sure that we were able to keep that in the bill, but we were successful in doing so. So that support is there. I have been working with Secretary Vilsack at Department of Ag to make sure then that when we're talking about these processors, that they're going to be eligible for the funding and not kind of pushed out because of the size of the processor. We want to make sure that the interpretation of this program as we had intended allows for processors of all sizes to be included. So we're working on clarity on that eligibility. Need to mention the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council's decision in December to close the EEZ waters to commercial fishing in the Cook Inlet. I was disappointed by the decision, but I'm also concerned about the federal management of resources that have and should be in states' hands. So I've said before, I'll repeat again, I'm standing ready to work with Cook Inlet stakeholders, the North Pacific Management Council, State of Alaska, as we're working on a long-term solution that supports the livelihoods there in Cook Inlet. I think we recognize we all have to work together on this, and so we have to continue that effort. The Congressman mentioned NOAA. We have to ensure that our fisheries surveys are on track and we don't see further lapses in data. NOAA frustrated all of us last year when they canceled the bulk of their surveys. You know, COVID did lots of things, but still, we have to ensure that these surveys continue. So I've been working with my Senate colleagues, calling on NOAA to ensure that these surveys are completed in 2021. We can't afford to have loss of data. We all know what it means to us to have a sustainably managed fishery. I spoke with the Secretary of Commerce just on Thursday and said, look, we are the best managed fishery in the country here, and it's because we rely on good data. So let's not have a lapse here. I know that Senator Sullivan pressed this with Secretary Raimondo as well. So we're going to make sure that NOAA commits to complete a full regime of research surveys. Also pushing the Secretary to declare a federal fisheries disaster for 5 different areas that have been submitted by the state. We know, again, we've got to do more with getting these disaster resources out much more quickly, much more readily. And my hope is we're going to make some good progress on that again. You heard the Congressman speak about Magnuson-Stevens, and between the good work that he's been doing and the great work that Senator Sullivan does on the Commerce Committee, we're in good hands with how they are working and paying attention to the needs here in Alaska. I've been working on a couple different measures that I think tie in well with the concerns related to climate change. I've introduced a bill. We did this last year. It's called the Blue Carbon for Our Planet Act.
Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've lost your screen. Would you be able to share that with us again?
Oh, yeah, I think.
There we go. We've got you back. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead and continue.
No. Okay. So I'm talking about blue carbon for our planet. So what we do with this, we establish a NOAA-led interagency working group focused on blue carbon, looking at producing an inventory of existing blue carbon ecosystems. One of the things that I think is exciting for us in Alaska is the potential of kelp and seagrass to capture and store carbon long-term. So we're working again with Senator Whitehouse on this. We plan to introduce that one pretty quick. On appropriations, everybody wants to know what's happening with appropriations. We're moving to address 2022 budget already. I'm pushing to increase federal funding for so many of the programs, again, that we're talking about, whether it relates to surveys, but all that comes with support for our commercial fisheries. We've been able to increase NOAA's fisheries surveys in the last fiscal year, where again, it's not just about the money, it's making sure that they actually get out there and do the surveys. The Congressman mentioned the Young Fishermen's Development Grant Program that was created last year, led by Senator Sullivan and the Congressman. So as part of the Appropriations Committee, I get the job of going out and finding the funding for that. But this is important. It is important because we recognize the significant barriers to entering the fisheries industry. So these grants are going to help support the training and the development of the next generation of Alaska fishermen. Real quickly, running through some of the things that we continue to keep an eye on. Genetically engineered salmon, unfortunately, it is coming, but by gosh, we're going to make sure that if it's in the grocery store, you know clearly what it is, that there's a clear label, not some hidden QFR code that you've got to look up and see what it is. It's the law of the land that there be clear labeling on GE salmon, and we're going to continue to make sure that language that we've carried in the appropriations bills continues. Working to again ensure labeling requirements for plant-based and imitation seafood. Again, if you're going to put this out there, you darn well better make sure that it's labeled as what it is. Pressing the FDA on flawed seafood advice. We've been dealing with that for a couple of years now, more than a couple of years, on misleading information regarding the risk of mercury in seafood, and this is despite the guidelines the dietary guidelines that are out there. So we'll continue on some of these other initiatives that you wouldn't necessarily think are part of the appropriations process, but clearly are. I see that Senator Sullivan is on my screen anyway, so he's in. I know folks have a lot of questions, and so I'm going to end my remarks by just thanking again the Chamber, and I also want to thank Ann Robertson. Ann has been my fish person for several years now. She came to me through the Sea Grant program, which has just been fabulous in providing great resources and great opportunities for those young people who are interested. And Ann is leaving me to go out and commercial fish. So she'll be up near Haines this summer. And I brought on Jamie O'Connor to take over my fish issues. Many of you know Jamie through her work around the state, comes from Bristol Bay, and I'm delighted to have her on board. So with that, Sarah, I'm going to kick it back to you, and happy to stay on and take questions, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Murkowski. I see now that we have had Senator Sullivan join us. For all of you wondering where he was, I just want to say thank you so much for his persistence. We've had a lot of technical glitches today, and he was so dedicated to joining us via his National Guard unit today. And so, Senator Sullivan, I do have your mic muted right now, so you will have to unmute. But let me go ahead and just read a quick bio about Senator Sullivan. Senator Dan Sullivan was sworn in as Alaska's 8th United States Senator on January 6, 2015, to protect and enhance Alaska's role as a seafood powerhouse is one of the many reasons Senator Sullivan has fought to sit on the Senate Commerce Committee. As a member of that committee, he has passed numerous bills and provisions to ensure that Alaska's fisheries remain healthy and vital, fighting burdensome regulations that would needlessly restrict access to our fishing resources and expanding markets for seafood. Senator Sullivan authored the most comprehensive ocean debris bill ever passed in Congress, Save Our Seas. He negotiated the Vessel Incident Discharge Act, which provides fishing vessel owners and operators relief from overly burdensome federal regulations for vessel incidental discharges. He closed a loophole in the National School Lunch Program prohibiting foreign caught fish from being served in our schools, and authored the Young Fishermen's Development Act, which will reduce basic barriers to entry through new grants, training opportunities, and apprenticeship programs for young fishermen. He also authored another provision of law requiring that fisheries be principal negotiating objective for all new trade agreements. Because of this provision in the recently negotiated U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the renegotiated NAFTA, there are multiple articles on fisheries, including phasing out subsidies, combating illegal fisheries, prohibitions on certain vessels and operations, and port state measure requirements. Senator Sullivan has also worked to protect Alaskan-sourced seafood in the most recent tranche of tariffs on imports from China, and was instrumental in getting CARES Act funding to fishermen, including programs such as the PPP and the regulation fixes needed to make these programs work for the industry, ensuring that many Alaskans were eligible. Going forward, Senator Sullivan will continue to relentlessly work to maintain Alaskans' access to fisheries, expand markets for American seafood, cut overburdensome regulations that hurt our fishermen, and continue to work toward conservation and healthy oceans so that commercial fishing remains a viable career path well into the future. Thank you so much, and welcome, Senator Sullivan.
Great. Sarah, can you hear me?
We've got you.
Good. Well, listen, thanks for that very kind introduction. And you mentioned it, I'm actually at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, doing my Marine Corps Reserve duty. You know, I drill with the Marine Corps Special Operations Command. That's been my 5 years. As my staff knows, normally when I go do this drill, I kind of go dark, right? I just focus on my Marine Corps duties. But when I heard Comfish was happening, I said, Comfish, I'm not going to miss that for anything. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm just in my rental car outside the MARSOC headquarters right now. So I wanted to mention that. I wanted to mention something that I think Alaskans care about. You know, this has been my unit for the last 5 years. It's a active duty unit, and just they have a wall of honor here. And I haven't been here in a year because of the pandemic. This wall of honor is all the Special Operations Marines that have been killed in action. It's a little bit of a sad issue, but I think all Alaskans, all Americans, you know, this wall continues to grow, right? And I only mention that because a lot of people forget that we still have young men and women all over, you know, in different parts of the world protecting our interests. And so I just wanted to mention that because a lot of times people forget that. I just want to first thank the great members of the Kodiak Chamber. Sarah, you're doing a great job, but everybody, you know, there's very few communities in the state that I think my team and I, and, you know, Lisa and Don, and I have a great staff too, as you guys all know, Karina, Eric. But there's not a community that we work more closely with, get good ideas with, try to implement them together. And I just want to thank everybody. We've, you know, been through a rough year, but a lot of the things we were able to get done on the pandemic relief, on the fix for fishermen, the 1099 fix, on the, you know, just the 300 million that we got in the CARES. These were all ideas that we got from literally all of you. So I just want to thank you. You know, Sarah, I don't know, I was going to review some of the things we got done, but your intro was very kind. It did mention a lot of the things. Let me just highlight a couple that I think we want to keep continuing to work together with all of you on trade. I was proud to get that Trade Promotion Authority provision in all for all trade agreements, that they have to have a whole section on fisheries, opening markets for our fish. That's called TPA. That was a 6-year bill that expires at the end of this year. I think it's really important that the Biden administration try to renew it. I've talked to the new U.S. trade rep about this. I've talked to her about the Russian embargo, and Senator Murkowski and I, when we met with the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor just a couple of weeks ago in Anchorage, when they met with their Chinese counterparts, we pressed them hard to work on the tariffs that the Chinese have put on our exports. As you know, the China trade deal, phase 1, actually had a really good section on seafood. We pressed the Trump administration hard to make sure any deal with China, they were going to include seafood. They did. The purchases that China had committed to in that phase 1 agreement were quite big, over $2 billion by the end of the 2-year agreement. And yet we're obviously not seeing the execution of that. So we've raised this. Secretary of State, the U.S. trade rep, I think they need to renew this authority to do new trade deals. And of course, when they do it, we will make sure that that fisheries provision is in there. We have a new USDA secretary. In my meetings with him, I pressed him really, really hard on the trade relief program that a lot of us worked on together. That's now, run its course in January, but I pressed them to look hard at doing it again. And we'll see. We need to get you guys engaged with him. Just to be perfectly honest, he didn't seem terribly interested in fisheries and, more interested in the farmers. And I said, well, what about the farmers of the sea, you guys? So I think we have work to do with him. I didn't vote for him at the end of the day just because I thought he was too dismissive of our fisheries. On the other hand, the Secretary of Commerce, I strongly supported her. I think she's going to be good. She was good on the 30-30 issue when I raised that, saying, look, that looks like a disaster. She said, Senator, I'm not going to commit to anything with a bumper sticker like that until I know how it impacts stakeholders. And I said, good, because my stakeholders will be really negatively impacted by that. So these are big issues we need to keep working on. I totally agree with Lisa on the NOAA surveys. I think, we were pressing the Trump administration really hard on, hey, what the heck? Why did you miss the surveys? And I pressed the new Secretary of Commerce that this is a critical issue. No matter where we are in the pandemic, we have to do surveys. She seemed very interested in that. We have been, another issue I know that concerns everybody with this new administration, we're looking and being very focused on over-regulation. I was proud to, as you mentioned, Sarah, get the EPA VITA law finally passed, so you don't have to get an EPA permission to hose down your deck. One of the stupidest regs I think I've ever heard of in my life. We finally got rid of that. But now we have another stupid regulation that our fishermen need to wear masks. Senator Murkowski and I have been pressing this relentlessly. I had a call with the Coast Guard Commandant just about 3 days ago, a call with the White House guy who's supposedly in charge of all the CDC issues. We had a meeting with the head of the CDC. We are trying to explain to them how just, no offense, but just how stupid this is and how uninformed it is. And really, could be a safety issue, not with regard to COVID, but with regard to having to wear masks when you're out on the, deck of a ship in 30-foot waves trying to bring in gear or, pots. So we're going to continue to work that one. One issue that I think was a really important win, and hopefully we can continue it. We were able last year, we kind of pre-conferenced the Coast Guard bill. My team was writing most of that. We pre-conferenced that with the House, And then we were able to get it attached to the defense bill. That's something that I've been trying to get done for the last 5 years. We finally got it done with good cooperation on the House side. That's important because the defense bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, that bill moves every year. 60 years, that bill moves. That's one of the most important bills. I'm on the Armed Services Committee, so we know that bill is really important. But the Coast Guard bill doesn't move every year. And a lot of times you'll have stuff that happens in the defense bill that impacts the Coast Guard, but they're not moving their bill. And as you know, we can get a lot of fisheries issues done in the Coast Guard bill. So what I've been arguing is, hey, our Coast Guard men and women they're awesome. They should have legislation moves every year, just like the Marines or anyone else. We got this idea to connect the two bills, and we finally got it done. So I'm hopeful that that's going to be a precedent that we keep going on. That way we'll be able to move the Coast Guard bill every year, just like we move the defense bill, and it'll help us in our fishing community get some of the issues that we move a lot of things in the Coast Guard bill that touch on our fisheries issues. We're going to continue to work on, the sustainability, cleanliness of our oceans. Sarah mentioned Save Our Seas 2.0. A lot of you worked with us on that. That passed in December. We got over $65 million of NOAA research for ocean acidification. We need to keep working on that issue. We've made good progress for the fishermen down in Southeast on the transboundary mining issue. Is something I've raised with Prime Minister Trudeau twice when I saw him in the last couple of years. The Canadians are finally moving on it. So, and then as Lisa said, the disasters. I think we have a strong record. Whenever we've got a request from the state on disaster,
It looks like we've lost Senator Sullivan for just a brief moment here while internet buffers. And so, Senator Murkowski, I'd like to take just a moment to go into some questions that have come in.
Sure.
So from Summers Cole, we've received, it has been encouraging to see recent actions in the Energy Act of 2020 and Save Our Seas Act to address climate change and keep our oceans clean. Thank you. Climate change is an increasing concern for Alaskan fishing businesses. The science is clear that carbon emissions must be reduced in order to curb ocean acidification and ocean warming trends. What actions are you taking to reduce global emissions to protect Alaskans whose industries and livelihoods depend on the ocean?
Well, the specific lead into that, again, I think I mentioned our Blue Carbon for Our Planet Act, again, looking at the role that our oceans can play with regards to carbon sequestration, I think is important. The Energy Act, which we just passed last year, this was legislation that I've been working to update. We haven't really done an update to our energy policies for well over a decade now, so this was long overdue. So at the end of last year, contained in the omnibus bill, we passed a measure that I led, and again, very collaborative, had input and really measures from over 70 different lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. So I think what we put in place was some pretty enduring legislation, but contained within that are steps that will lead us to lower emissions from carbon. It's everything from a focus on carbon capture, utilization and storage, to what we are doing to build out more renewable energy, keen focus on the technology. This legislation has been lauded as probably the most significant legislation that we have seen to help reduce the level of emissions in this country that we've seen in again, about a decade. So that's what we did last year, but moving forward, I think we recognize that there is so much more that we have to do. And I think we have to do it in a manner that speaks to the urgency of the change that we're seeing. you in the fishing communities, this is your livelihood here. And as we're seeing changes, whether it's with ocean acidification, whether it's as the waters are warming, you're seeing the fish moving further north. What does that mean for purposes of the communities that have kind of established themselves in areas where it's close to the resource? We need to know and better understand. So I am a member of what we call the bipartisan, actually we call it the Climate Solutions Caucus, and it is a bipartisan group of lawmakers that are focused on building out consensus legislation. One of the things that we're probably going to move on most quickly in terms of actual legislation that you might see put in play is something that relates to how we're able to utilize the land, the soil through agricultural steps to just be smarter when it comes to our emissions, and how we can work to sequester carbon within the soils themselves. So again, whether it's on land, whether it's in the ocean, making sure that we're using aggressive technologies. In Alaska, where we get designated as, well, we're the oil and gas state, we most certainly are, but what I think is not well understood is the level of innovation that goes on in so many of our remote and rural communities. Diesel power generation is expensive, and it's usually noisy and dirty. Let's do everything that we can to build out our own renewable microgrid systems, and we're leading not only the country but the world in that. We've got some pretty good stories to tell, but there is so much more that we're continuing to do.
Thank you so much. I know that we have about 4 minutes left. Senator Murkowski, would you be willing to go just a little bit longer since we got a delayed start? Fantastic, thank you. So, I see Senator Sullivan is trying to join us again, so we'll see if that's successful before we move on.
There he is.
Welcome back, Senator Sullivan. We're sorry we cut you off, so please go ahead and continue.
My phone overheated. That's the first. Sorry about that, Sarah.
So we were just answering a couple of questions, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to just finish any thoughts that you weren't able to finish in your presentation.
Oh, I think I'm pretty much finished. So thanks, and look forward to any more questions. Okay,
perfect. So we'll move on to the next question, which is from an anonymous person. Thoughts on additional rounds of USDA STRP relief? We appreciated how smooth the process was and would like to see this occur again for Alaska's fishermen.
Yeah, I'll take that because I mentioned it in my comments. Look, I thought you guys did a great job. I thought it was an innovative program. And to be honest, I thought USDA did a good job. That was something we had worked really, really hard with the previous administration on. And, just made the case that just like farmers in the Midwest who are getting hurt really hard by the pandemic and the primarily China trade issues, so were the fishermen. And, we had an open ear with President Trump and his USDA Secretary Perdue. And when we got that program launched, which was pretty historic, because I know a number of you had press for this for years, it was over $500 million, and 16 of the 19 products were Alaskan products. So we were pleased with that. We knew it'd be a little bumpy and rocky with the implementation. You had a lot of Department of Ag officials who certainly weren't experts on seafood, but I think everybody worked it well. So this is a big issue I raised with the new incoming Secretary of Ag. So I think we're just going to have to educate him. I mentioned in my opening remarks, I'm just being honest here. He didn't he didn't seem that interested, but we can make him interested, right? So we, I mean, he was Secretary of Agriculture for 8 years. In some ways that's good. In some ways that can be not good if you think you know everything. This was clearly a new innovation, much needed. The previous Secretary of Ag supported it. So I think it's going to take all of us getting down there, maybe getting him up to Alaska to meet with all of you and press upon why this makes sense, why this is good for fishermen, why it was fair for fishermen. And so you certainly have our commitment as your delegation to keep working it. We'll just need to educate the new secretary on its importance.
Thank you. So we've briefly touched on some various aspects here, and I think we really only have time for one more question. So this should lead into it well. In 2014, Russia placed an embargo on buying U.S. seafood. The U.S. still purchases increasing amounts of Russian seafood. What can be done about this trade imbalance?
So maybe
Go ahead.
I'll just jump real quick on this too. You know, we worked this. It was a disappointment. I think it was the one area where the Trump administration, you may have seen, we had a meeting with Secretary Wilbur Ross, the U.S. trade rep, to press them on it. They put out some statements that they were looking into it. It was kind of weak. I thought we could have done more. And then we'll see with the new U.S. trade rep. She's very impressive. You know, a number of these officials, they don't get full support. I think she got 100 senators to vote for her. And in my meeting with her, I raised this issue front and center. And I said, look, it's ridiculous. 6 years. I mean, that embargo started at the end of the Obama administration, the whole Trump administration. Meanwhile, most of their fish comes in almost duty free, and they're taking market share from our fishermen in America. So she's going to look hard at this. So is the Secretary of Commerce. So you have our commitment to just make a reattack on it. It was the one area that I thought the Trump administration could have done more. And we'll see if the new administration focuses on it. But we certainly have been raising it in their confirmation meeting with us.
And the only thing that I might add to what Dan has said, and again, he's named the key individuals here, certainly the U.S. trade rep, but an opportunity to raise this in the context of the State Department and the diplomatic, the relationship that we have with Russia right now. So to raise this to the level of the Secretary of State as yet one more of those areas where we got some imbalance, as your questioner has noted, and the fact that this has been in place for as long as it has, the fact that it has caused harm to our fisheries is something that, again, the education needs to continue, and it needs to continue in different levels with those who are kind of coming at this from a different view. You've got U.S. trade, but you've also got State Department with regards to the relationship that you have with Russia. And so this is one that I think we all agree we have got to have addressed. It's been going on for far, far, far too long, and quite honestly, it's untenable.
Thank you so much from both of you. Really, we've run out of time. I know we haven't gotten the chance to answer all the questions that came in, but I'd like to offer this opportunity for each of you to just address any last thoughts that you might have for our audience, and maybe a way that they can reach out to you with some of those questions that didn't get answered.
I guess what I would ask is Sarah, if you can compile these questions and forward them to us. I know certainly we'd be happy to respond. Maybe we do it as a combined delegation response. But as Dan mentioned in his comments, so much of the input that we receive from you helps guide us in the varying priorities that we advance, whether it's through appropriations, as I am doing, or whether it's through legislation. And so please not only share comments from this ComFish platform that we've got going today, but again, as we are moving through the legislative process, we have, for those that are interested, that are online, we are taking requests on our website now for various appropriations projects. I think our deadline on that is April the 2nd, so we certainly encourage you to weigh in there, but also use that as an opportunity to forward any questions or updates that you think that we need to be engaged with. We're all trying to sort through much of what was advanced in this American Rescue Plan, this latest iteration of COVID relief that went well beyond COVID relief. And I know that last year, Dan and I had multiple town hall meetings, teletown halls, where we were just on the line there to answer questions from all over the state on a host of different issues. We're planning on doing some more of those in this spring, because people just have a lot of questions. So whether it is fisheries related or all things that are related, and when you look at the federal dollars that have come out, again, some $4 trillion in various programs and measures last year, plus now this additional 1.9 trillion. There's a lot of money, a lot of federal money that is moving around now. My point through all of this has been, let's get those resources to the communities and to the people that need it most. Let's make sure that we're addressing need. And so as you're learning more about it and want more information, please look to us and to our offices. The one last point I might raise with you is, you're probably all reading the news that now there is discussion of a pretty significant infrastructure bill, and what that infrastructure bill may look like is still obviously under discussion. How big, how much? We know from Alaska's perspective, there's a lot that we can do from an infrastructure view that will help us. It's everything from broadband to water and wastewater initiatives. So weigh in with your priorities, your concerns, so that we know, again, how best to address the needs that we have in a state where for so much it's brand new infrastructure. We're not trying to fix something that's old and broken. It's first time for us. So just appreciate what you've put together. To the good folks in Kodiak and the Chamber, thank you for making this great ComFish venue happen year after year, even if it's in a little bit different type of a format. So we appreciate it. Good to be with you, and hopefully next ComFish we're all actually back together. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. And Senator Sullivan, anything to add?
Yeah, I certainly would agree with Lisa that hopefully we're going to be back together physically at ComFish, at Crab Fest. But again, I just want to thank everybody. Look, our economy is really struggling, and as Alaskans, I think we can be really proud on the health side. We're not out of the woods yet, but we've done so well, literally better than any state in the country on vaccines, on testing. And I think that was a good example of everybody working together, state, feds, communities, tribal organizations, the VA. And we have a lot to be proud of in that regard. Number one in testing per capita, number one in vaccines, which is kind of a miracle given how big we are and spread out we are. But our economy's hurting. There's no doubt. And what you were able to do during the pandemic, still have a season, gave a lot of people hope. And I know it wasn't easy. We know it wasn't easy. And what I appreciated from last year in particular was that when we were working together, you guys came up with some really constructive, the chamber, ComFish, UFA, and we listened to those, and a lot of them we got done either through regs or actually in law. I think that's a really good partnership. We certainly view it that way, and we want to continue that. And that final point, look, we got a new administration. I'm certainly willing to work with them when they're going to be constructive, fight them when we have to, but we're going to have some battles. And I think it's going to be really important that we coordinate, that we work with you guys so you can be advocates. Sometimes I think, Senator Murkowski, Congressman Young, and we're strong advocates, but sometimes when it comes directly from you, the people on the front lines, it's even more powerful. So I think we got to look at ways to coordinate on that, whether it's opportunities or whether it's defense, where we don't want some of the ideas circulating around with this administration. So you have our commitment to do that and continue the strong partnership. But thanks again. Sorry about the glitches, but like I said, even down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, I wasn't going to miss ComFish this year.
Hey, Sarah, before we sign off, if I can just, not too often that I ask for the final word, but I just want to say, well, Senator Sullivan is online with all these fishermen across the state. How proud I am to not only have a partner serving Alaska in the Senate like I have with Dan, but to see you in uniform, to know that you've taken time out of your drill, which is, I know, incredibly significant and important to you. But it's a reminder to us of the dual hats that you wear. But as one who is active in your unit, active serving your country in multiple capacities, I don't see you in the uniform very often. And I just want to acknowledge the military service and what you provide our nation in that role, because I don't think Alaskans get to see it quite as often, and you make us very proud. So I just wanted to personally acknowledge that level of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That means a lot. Thank you.
I can only echo those wonderful remarks. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to both of you, as well as Congressman Don Young, for your time and your efforts today and really every day. Of course, this presentation wouldn't have been possible without the generosity of our sponsors, so we'll go ahead and list those in the chat. But we will be back here shortly in just a few minutes for our state legislative update. So thank you again so much.
Thank you all.
Buddy.
Take care.